What's up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Dravin's Den. Oh, wait a minute. I was kind of like listening, kind of watching on my phone there to know when I was live, because as my viewers know, I have a hard time knowing when I'm live. But anyway, hey, tonight we have a very special guest. His name is James Noll. He is an author. He's been an educator. He's been a sandwich maker. He's been a sound guy. He's been something really weird his wife told me about once, but we won't repeat that on air. But first up, I have something I would like to throw out there. You notice Hodge isn't here tonight. Unfortunately, he lost a very dear friend of his. So our thoughts and prayers, my thoughts and prayers, our Dravin's, go out to Hodge for the loss of his friend. You guys, a lot of my viewers know that I've lost a lot of good friends over the course of a couple of years. So I know how hard it is. So Hodge, man, yeah, our hearts are out to you, brother. And unfortunately, the other guest we had tonight, April Birch, who represented a very good charity here in Fredericksburg. Her family has fallen ill, so thoughts and prayers out to them as well. And hey, we will continue on, and we are very, very blessed to have James Noll brought here by the grace of God. So, what's up, James?
Hey,
how are you doing, brother?
Good. How are you?
I'm peachy ducky keen, and yeah, all that kind of stuff.
Excellent.
But
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. Guys, I've known James for probably what 5-6 years now. Back when I started my very first project, which was Paranormal Porch. I actually regret that name now, because now I look back on it, I'm like, why would I call it that? But yeah, James came on for the pilot episode of Paranormal Porch. I'm not even real sure how I met you. I just heard you were a sound guy, and maybe I don't know. I don't know how that happened, because
it was from Charles at CCTV.
Oh, Charles Thomas, CBTV.
Yeah.
Yes.
I helped him film the Spotsylvania Christmas parade, and I was going back to my car, and you caught me up, and you're like, hey, can you help me out with this project? It's a ghost hunting thing. I said, yeah, sure, why not?
Yes. Now I remember that. Thank you for bringing that flood of memories back. But no. James is wow, the ultimate professional. Awesome when it comes to sound and everything. We worked together a little bit. We did that first episode of Paranormal Porch. Unfortunately, it never saw a lot of daylight. But that's how projects work in this field. You never know.
It's very common, from what I understand. I mean, lots of good things don't go anywhere, unfortunately.
Yeah. But that is not why we are here tonight. Tonight we are going to talk about James's other passion. But before we get to that, we are going to talk about how he got to be a horror sci-fi novelist, because he's been so many other things, which if you've seen the advertisement, there's like a long laundry list of jobs this guy has gone through. Now, but the first question I have for you tonight, James, is when did you first realize that you're like, you know what, I want to be a writer?
I think it's the case with all writers. It's always been there. You've always wanted to write, and it's because I've always just been a reader. My mother got me in the habit. I remember the moment that I was able to decode Dr. Seuss books, and I ran downstairs with a stack of them, and my mom and dad were watching Merv Griffin. That's how long ago this was. It was either Merv Griffin or what's that?
I remember Merv Griffin. Yes.
Yeah, it was either Merv Griffin or the Carol Burnett show. But I ran downstairs, with that stack and started reading out loud to them. And I think, first like, oh, good. And, okay, that's enough. You need to go back up to bed. But that obviously started it. If you're going to be a writer, you've got to be a reader. I remember writing my first short story. It wasn't until 11th grade, really, that I felt like I could do something like that. And it was because there was a series of books called The World's Greatest Sci-Fi, and then, followed by the year. So the ones that I kept on reading over and over again was, I think it was like 66, 67, and 68. And I found them just because my parents had this big bookshelf, and if I didn't have a book, I would go wander around in their bookshelf and pick something out. And my brother was a big reader as well. He turned me on to a lot of different books, Clockwork Orange, Catch-22, all of that stuff. And so it was just lying around, and I picked it up, and that's where I started the habit. And it was, or I guess continued the habit. And it was a story called Repent Harlequin Repent Harlequin Said the TikTok Man. It's by Harlan Ellison. It's a classic sci-fi story. I didn't know that then. I just liked the story. And it was probably like my 8th or 9th time reading it when, like I said, I was a junior in high school, and I thought, I bet I could do something like this. And it was 11 o'clock at night, and I went down to the family Commodore Amiga computer, which is an old sentence.
Oh my God.
And I typed out this story and showed it to my girlfriend the next day, and she was like, yeah, you should keep trying, and which is the case with all first stories. And it was always there since then. I wrote in college. I published a couple of short stories in the college literary magazine. I'd always wanted to do it. I was an English major, and those two obviously coalesce. And post college, this is around the time where indie publishing hadn't taken off yet, so you had to go through the gatekeepers. And so I would write novels, and I would send out query letters to agents and publishers trying to get somebody to represent me so I could continue to write. That was what you had to do. You had to send a query letter out to an agent, or if publishers accepted them, to a publisher. There was a book that you could get it was called The Writer's Market, and they put one out every couple of years. So you go through it and you figure out who these people were and what kind of books they liked, and whether you could actually submit something to them, and send out a letter and then wait for their response. But at one point, I like wallpapered my room with the rejection letters, because it was just, I wasn't ready yet, but I thought I'm just going to keep on trying. And for good reason too. The books that I wrote then weren't good. That I think every writer goes through that practice session. And so, yeah, it just was always there. So that's where it began, and that's how it kind of scaled through. That was early aughts.
Well, okay, I have another very important question. What the hell is on your finger?
Oh, fidgeting stuff. This is it's a cord holder for your desk.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Here, I'll put it aside. It's distracting.
Big booger.
No. Cord holder.
Yeah, sorry. The director in me is like, I noticed something that's just off. Yeah. Okay. So, so that's how you developed your passion for writing. Okay. Now, another very important question that I really want to know, because I mean, I started writing poetry back in like 85, and I did poetry, and I started writing short stories, which was just longer versions of poetry. But I always kept getting these really great ideas for, sorry, I major faux pas. I start getting these really great ideas for, longer stories. But my problem that I ran into was switching myself from character A to character B to character C to character D, having those interactive conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as someone who's written 13, is that what I counted? 13 novels?
No. I think I'm on novel 7 right now.
Okay, I might have saw repeats in the or something?
Yeah, there's some collections that I put together. One collection has 3 novellas though, so I mean, put 3 novellas together, you got a novel. So maybe I've got 8, but
Okay.
maybe you're looking at the short stories. I published 2 collections of short stories too. So
Oh, okay, okay, gotcha. But when you're writing, how is it that you flip a switch and you have multiple personality disorder? And so that you can actually have a conversation between multiple people, respond with emotion, depending on what the situation is, and make it coherent, make it make sense, and also at the same time make the story continue. What is the thought process that actually makes that happen? Because that was the biggest problem I ran into, man.
well, I mean, that's a lot to bite off all at once, but I think in general, what you're talking about is structure and story beats. And so a narrative, if you're looking at genre fiction, and that's a lot of what I write is genre fiction, they have to hit specific points along the arc all the way up to the climactic moment. And so in order to get to those particular beats, your characters have to do and say things to reach that point, and they have to do it in a way that's believable. So if you're talking about Pixar has a great thing that I show my students every year. They call it their story spine. And so a general narrative arc has exposition, initiating moment, rising action, climax, all that stuff that you learned in 9th and 10th grade, falling action and resolution. And then what they did with the story spine was they using a lot of their famous movies, they break it down to, with your exposition, it's once upon a time, every day until one day. And then they have a whole bunch of because of that's leading up to a low point and the climactic moment where the world is set to rights. So that's one thing that you have to take into consideration, is you got to have that structure. There's a lot of people who don't plan, and there's a lot of people who only plan. And the people who don't plan, they're called pantsers because they're flying by the seat of their pants. They're also referred to as the discovery writers.
That's me.
Yeah. And a lot of people start out that way, and I certainly did. And it's a lot of fun to write that way, because you allow for things to happen that you hadn't thought of before. It's going to happen in the moment, and it feels natural. And sometimes it goes off on a tangent, you cut it. Sometimes it actually works. That's the fun of creativity. The planners, they take those story structures and they delicately and specifically plan everything out that they're doing, and they hit those beats at specific pages even. I mean, if you want to look at a art of writing that is very, very specific to beats, screenwriting, a lot of screenwriting is so specific that they have it down to the page number. Like if you haven't moved out of act one by this page, you're taking too long. If you haven't hit this trope or this beat by this page, you're taking too long. You have to get to there in these pages, because that's what people enjoy when they're watching movies. And so I kind of think of myself as a plantser. So I'm somewhere in between. I used to be firmly discovery. Then I found out the joys of structure. And so I'll usually plan something, but also allow myself to go outside those bounds if something more interesting occurs. But knowing that I have to hit particular beats by a particular point in the novel, not a page number, but a particular point in the novel, or even by a word count, it helps. The other thing to think of is, and we're still talking about structure, because part of your question was like, how do you get these characters to interact? And that's characterization. But another thing to think of is, if you know where you're going in that arc, then each chapter has to have a particular meaning. There is a goal sometimes for it, or a purpose to that chapter. It can't just be something where like it's a one-off TV episode, because you got to create 24 episodes in the season, and we're just going to put some filler in here because it's fun. If your characters are going to do something or go somewhere, or something's going to happen to them, you've got to make it serve where the narrative is going. And so that also helps, knowing that at a certain point towards the end of the novel, it's going to lead to this particular climax, and these characters have to get there, and that helps. Now, in a rough draft, you're not always going to hit it. And so another part of this is the process of writing. What I tell my students all the time, what I have to remind myself of is that my rough draft, I'll try to adhere to that as much as possible. And then I'll fly off on tangents whenever I feel like it. But I know that it is just a rough version of what I ultimately want to create. Because in the subsequent development drafts, I will go back and I'll say, okay, well, here was my original arc, but here's what I did. And here's what I can do with it to start making it work a little bit better. And then I'll re-arc everything and, you know, plan everything out, sketch everything out using, you know, whatever is available to me. I like to do my paper. So I've got scraps all over the place of novels in various stages of distress. Rearrange chapters, take a section that happened too soon and put it back further. And until ultimately you have, you know, you've shoehorned or figured out a way to make what you have into a good narrative. And then finally, because I don't want to go too long on the structure point, but you always have to make things difficult for your characters. Always throw something in your character's way. If they have a goal in a chapter, at least one time they should not be able to achieve it. They can maybe force them off onto a side quest before they try to do it again. They're always trying to get something done, and then allow them to succeed or fail. Most of the time, you know, what you're trying to do, especially with horror fiction and other genre fiction, is create suspense and tension. And so the suspense and tension is built by the character that the audience hopefully likes not getting what they want, not achieving the goal that they set out to do, having something bad happen to them, having to overcome something. And then maybe sometimes they do achieve it, but then something else comes up in the achieving that they have to solve, a problem that they have to solve in a later chapter, or something along those lines. And I know that's very general, but that's how I think of as I'm writing these structures. But the other thing you were talking about is characterization. So we can talk about that separately.
Okay, that's your cue.
Okay. I know. I didn't want to ramble.
No, I mean, honestly, you know, it is extremely difficult. And like I said before, you know, this is not a one person story that you're trying to create. It's a multiple person story. Mm-hmm. And behind each person, you have a different entity altogether. You have family background, friend background, emotional trauma, yada, 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 that creates that character. Mm-hmm. Now, am I making it too complex when I'm trying to write a story and I have just, you know, make it easy? I have two people and they're on a journey and they need to start at one end of the street, get to the other end of the street, and there's multiple terrors and obstacles in between. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to let the reader know that these two people are two individuals. They're two separate individuals. They're friends, they're enemies, whatever. Doesn't matter at that point. But they are separate individuals.
Right. Yeah.
And their personalities were created by, you know, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, whatever it was. So is there a rabbit hole that as a writer you can fall down and get so sucked into trying to create your characters that your story is never told?
Yeah. I tell it to my students all the time. I'm teaching in a new county now, and I'm not teaching creative writing anymore. But when I did teach creative writing, this is similar to what you're talking about. Students I would teach them something called the 7-step story, which is, you know, throw an obstacle in a character's way and have them try to overcome it. And then they succeed or fail, or they fail the first time, then they try again and they succeed or fail. And, you know, I give them about 4 class periods, 5 class periods to bang out a draft. And invariably, there's always going to be 1 or 2 or more who on that first day, they're 250 words in, 500 words in, they go, Mr. Noll, this sucks. I can't finish it. I don't know where it's going. I don't know what to do, or this is really bad. And what you're talking about is a version of that, where I go, well, how do you know if this story sucks if you haven't even finished it yet? You have no idea what your story is. I forget the author's name. I think it might be Neil Gaiman, but I could be wrong, so don't quote me on that. said something along the lines of, your first draft is you just telling yourself the story. So you have something to work with. And so some of those students will get stuck and not finish their draft. And I taught my class like a workshop. So what I say is like, you'll get full credit, all you just turn something in, and that's what the workshop is for. We'll help you kind of figure out where this thing should go.
It's a huge brainstorming session.
Yeah, exactly. Like, here it is. That's all workshops are. Here it is. Here's what I've got. Tell me what works. Tell me what sucks. I'll take the note if it works. And if it doesn't work, I leave it alone, but at least give somebody some direction. But what you're talking about is getting too stuck, maybe in inner monologue. Maybe you get too stuck in worrying about having this character be a real being versus completing the story itself. And so that one thing that's helpful, especially for beginning writers, is to have them to do something that is goal oriented. And allow them to try to do that thing, so that you have a place to go. Whether they succeed or fail, it doesn't matter. You're having them act. And so as they act, they will respond to whatever obstacles are coming their way accordingly, if you know those particular characters well. And one thing that you mentioned too, I thought that was cool, was you said, you have these two people, maybe they're friends, maybe they're enemies. It's always good to juxtapose two characters. So when you said enemy, it's like, oh yeah, that's fun. Always put two enemies together, or people that don't like each other, and allow them to try to do something and let them screw it up. That's so much more fun than creating a Mary Sue moment where they beat the dragons at first. They're good at everything and everything wins. No good story was ever told that said, once upon a time there was a girl who had to do this, and then she did it the first time she tried, and everybody was happy. It's like, yeah, no, that sucks.
Yeah, that's a Disney story. That doesn't actually.
Yeah. But the other thing too that you have to think of is not worrying so much about telling your audience everything all at once. Readers are usually sophisticated. We're all very sophisticated multimedia consumers now, and we know what good entertainment and what bad entertainment is. The novel's been around since Don Quixote. And we've all, I don't know about you, I watch a lot of television just because I enjoy storytelling and movies. Yeah. And even nonfiction has story arcs to it. They might not adhere to the standard story arc, but there's storytelling is one of the principal human faculties. We all love it, or most people love it. Here, a little tangent. I met a guy when I was in college. I was waiting tables, and I told him I was going to see a movie that had come out. This is like, late 90s, I think, or mid 90s. And he looked at me and said, going to the movies is the biggest waste of my time I've ever had in my life. And I was like, I don't know if I trust you anymore. Who doesn't like movies? Like, this is crazy. Yeah. But I think what you're talking about too is the difference between showing and telling. And it's the baseline thing that I also teach my students, which is, don't worry about about letting the audience know who your character is right off the bat. Nobody wants to read, once upon a time there was a girl named this, and she was like that, and she looked like this, and she had trauma in her past because she was she was born into an abusive family. You have to let that unfold in her reactions to things that are going on in her interactions with the other characters. And from there, something will happen, and you'll see that character struggle with the response. And since if it's a protagonist, it'll be somebody that we like, and you'll be rooting for her. Let's say, I mean, this is just a random scenario. The character is a teenage girl sitting at lunch, and she has to deal with a bully. And instead of telling us that she's being abused at home, you have her respond the way somebody who is being abused at home to a bully. And then it goes down to that particular character's personality. Maybe she's had it with getting beat up at home, and she explodes and kicks the crap out of the bully. Or more likely, is shining on her personality to all of her friends and trying her best to get through the day. But then when the bully comes along, just shrinks and just turns into this shell of who or she was because of what has been going on at home. But you can show that instead of telling it, and then proceed the way the character is supposed to proceed.
Right. Well, in your creative process, do you spend, say, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, developing one character, and then you spend another 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years developing another character, and then mesh them? Or do you literally have a split personality and you're like, okay, I'm Sarah, I'm Bob, and then you automatically know how to mesh those two characters?
Yeah, I don't spend. Well, first of all, my process is evolutionary. I used to just start writing and see where something would go, and then, like I told you, I got into planning, and now I'll plan something out, I'll plot something out. But here's a plug with my latest book, Mungwort.
We're getting there, James. We're getting there.
Well, I'm giving you an idea. Oh, they just popped up. This book actually sprang out of the short film that I produced, which was adapted from a short story that I wrote. And we finished the short film, and we're actually finishing the post and the short film right now too. But in between, me and my friend Chip, he's a screenwriter in Hollywood, wrote the feature-length version of what came out of that short film. And then because the short film was taking so long to finish, I just decided to go ahead and adapt the screenplay into a novel, which is that's not the way it usually is. That's a completely reverse of the way it goes. But who cares? I got what I got. So yes. in the writing of this script, I sat and talked with Chip for hours sometimes about plot, about character, about where we wanted this thing to go, which was not the norm for me. I've never sat down and plotted something out with somebody, or got to a point where I thought, I'm not sure where to go next. I'm going to go talk to my collaborative partner and figure it out, how to proceed. And so we knew we had a character. We had a main character, Cece. We knew she comes from an abusive background. She's been out on the road. She's in her mid-20s, and she comes back home. This is set in Spotsy. So she comes back home to Fredericksburg because she's gotten a postcard from her father, and she's a little bit bothered by it. So that's like the whole setup. And Chip and I knew the relationship between her and her father, but I never wanted to broadcast that because there was going to be, I wanted the plot to unfold for the audience. So I'm not going to spoil it here as well. And so when she shows up in Fredericksburg and she has this goal, she finally ends up on this ranch or this farm, and she starts meeting people there. And those people just kind of sprung to life as the plot proceeded. She was there. The first person she meets is a guy named Ben. And I always saw Josh Gad as being Ben. I don't know if you know who Josh Gad is, but he's an actor. He played Olaf, and he was the voice for Olaf in Frozen. Okay. He's a short little white guy with frizzy hair, and he's kind of portly. So I saw him, and so he kind of took on this like somewhat goofy atmosphere or characterization or personality. And then she also meets Aiko and Jake, and Jake's this kind of like strutting Adonis, and then she has an enemy on the farm. Her name's Harlow. So they all kind of take on their roles and respond and interact accordingly. Harlow's an asshole, and she's in charge of everybody, and she acted like every dickhead supervisor I ever had. Jake and Aiko's actually okay. Jake acted like every super manly athlete that I ever either played sports with or that I've seen on TV. There's two real big, I call them the big bosses. They're supervisors who, they're caricatures of the R. Lee Emery character and Full Metal Jacket, so, and they're all going to respond accordingly. The enemy's not going to like Cece because Cece's confident, and she's a challenge to that enemy. The two supervisors aren't going to like Cece because they just don't like anybody who pushes back. I don't know what that is. Is that R. Lee Emery?
No, that was my boss texted me from a convention in Chicago at a Renaissance fair saying, I'm having a beer for all of us. And I said, I'm on air, you're next.
So anyways, I know what these characters are like. I know who they are. But it's not like I spend hours and hours and hours figuring out their backstory. I
Yeah.
will maybe in a development draft go back and say, okay, now that I know who's in this, who are they? What are they like? Why are they responding this way? And maybe I'll sketch some details out for me, but I won't put that into the book. And I know just from working with Chip, they do that with the story Bibles for shows, and they'll do that for, you know, with character sketches for feature length movies, as a part of the marketing materials, and as a part of the writing process. So because there's a lot more collaboration with screenwriting than there is with novel writing. So if you have 2 or 3 people writing on a particular screenplay, you'll need to have those things up all over the place so that people know who they are and where they came from.
Yeah.
But for me, writing novels and short stories, it's just, this is who they are. This is how they would react. And if they do something that's out of character, there better be a reason for it. Otherwise, I got to adjust it or cut it.
James, I mean, the complexity of what goes through your brain doing this is, you know, and me, all right, I'm an emotional creature. I'm a male Pisces, you know, for anyone who is into horoscopes and things like that and kind of knows.
I am
that,
too.
Okay, yes, yeah. You do.
March 15th.
March 13th. So, you know, and being that you said that, I'm actually very amazed because the emotional creatures that we are, and the fact that you managed to place enough logic to counterbalance that emotional creature that you are, and able to structure, you know, not one character, but multiple characters. You know, that is a very hard hurdle for people shit in everyday life, but much less, you know, actually creating novels and so forth. Now, just because it's the easiest go-to, let's talk about Stephen King.
Sure.
All right.
Love him.
Stephen King's inspirations have been from dreams, have been from places that he grew up around in Maine.
Mm-hmm.
Half of my family is from Maine. I had the opportunity to go up to Maine one time and kind of go around to different places and see in real life, you know.
You're sporting the beard now, though. You got the Maine beard going on.
You know what? This is for a sci-fi part that I should have played last weekend. Unfortunately, I got canceled due to a death in the family of my co-star. But yeah, so I have to keep it for at least another month.
It looks good.
I don't know, dude. Look, you see that? You see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have the little ones on my chin too. It's not fun.
Aren't I younger than you?
I was born in 72.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm younger than you.
Yeah, well, you know.
This ain't fair, dude. All right, but anyway, so Stephen King, you know, obviously everybody knows who Stephen King is.
Yeah.
So with his inspirations being what they are, and I'm sure you're aware of them, where did your inspirations from your different novels come from? And you know, if you can, you know, pick a book, tell your inspiration, pick another book, tell your inspiration, just so the audience understands, you know, where the different viewpoints came from.
So, all right, the first novel I ever wrote was called Raleigh's Prep, and it's in the collection A Knife in the Back. So with A Knife in the Back, you've got 7 short stories and then the novel Raleigh's Prep. And I packaged it that way because I was doing a lot of conventions like Comic-Cons, author book festivals and things like that. And it was just a way of making there be more value to the book because there was more in there. Right. But that novel was approximately 56,000 words long, which is, it's barely a novel. That's, you know, novels can start after 44,000 words, but generally what people like to read with novels is somewhere between 70,000 to 90,000. That's the sweet spot in there, depending on the genre they read. Epics are like 100,000, 110,000. So But with Raleigh's Prep, I had already written novels involving the three main characters, especially one, it was just simply titled Topher. That was in the main character's name. And I wanted to write a character who was, while being a reprehensible human being, was really, really funny. And it comes from being influenced by books like Catch-22, A Confederacy of Dunces, anything that Kurt Vonnegut wrote. And the reason that first novel failed, by the way, was because there was no structure to it. And I just had a series of events occurring, much like Seinfeld, like for no reason. Some of the jokes landed, some of them didn't. But that was the inspiration for that. Well, actually, sorry. What ended up happening was I'd always known that I wanted to write about these three main characters' history. And I knew they had gone to prep school together. And so I started writing that. And that was a whole lot more fun than writing the original one. And then but I was having a problem with their voices and their intonation. Topher talks like this. Good God, man, why are you doing things like this? And he's always just sarcastic and cynical. And his friends, Michael Zorn and Kenneth Gertrude Hughes, are these gigantic men who have, they're almost like Lenny from Of Mice and Men. They just don't have the intellectual disability. Michael Zorn's kind of the muscle, and they look the same, but they responded with this elevated diction and complex syntax that would not make sense for a high school student to embody. And then I thought, you know what? They've always been like this. Topher's always been, from the time that he was 5 years old, this cynical old man. And same with Michael or I call him Zorn and Gertrude. They've always been like his henchmen, and they're always going to behave that way no matter what. So from the time they were 15 all the way up, and from that point on, it made it so much easier. And I mean, you're talking about characterization. I just knew who they were. And they did silly things and responded sillily to everything. Not that sillily is a word, but you know what I'm talking about. So that was the inspiration from that. And then the sequel to that is called Tracker's Travail. After I wrote Raleigh's Prep, I thought, well, I don't want the next book in the series. I wanted to create a 3-book series, and I don't want it to take off immediately after Raleigh's Prep. So I set it in Fredericksburg, and I put it about 30 years later, so that they're middle-aged men at this point. And then, they've become, because of the events in Raleigh's Prep, they've become, they call themselves transcendental trackers. They're like Ghostbusters, essentially, and they show up in Fredericksburg right when a zombie apocalypse is happening, and they've got to go and help put that down. And then all the, I tried to incorporate all the lore and the ghosts and Civil War stuff from Fredericksburg in that book. And then the third book is post-apocalyptic, and so I at the end of Tracker's Travail, the end of the world occurs, and then I put all 3 characters into like my favorite post-apocalyptic scenarios. So that series alone was written for that particular reason. That's why I wanted to write them. After that, I wrote a book called The Hive, and I hadn't written an alien invasion story yet. So I wrote The Hive as if I was trying to write a Netflix series. And there's 4 seasons, 5 episodes in each season. So the whole series has an arc, each season has an arc, and then each episode has an arc. So the story starts with the main character. Her name's Amanda May Jett. She lives out in Spotsy. The end of the world happens because of an alien invasion. She lives out on the farm.
There's no Jets in Spotsy.
There are tons of Jets in Spotsy. Where I got the name. So anyways, so for that one, I wanted to create this capable, strong female character, but who comes from Spotsy. And she and her father have to fight the aliens. And so, each episode, that one was very episodic because, like I said, I was writing it as if it was a Netflix series. And that one was tons of fun to write just because I got to set it out there. At some point, they come into Fredericksburg. And again, I got to use all the Fredericksburg lore and the Spotsy lore, as well as all the sci-fi tropes and things that I like to do. I wrote a book called The Rabbit, the Jaguar, and the Snake, which is the first in a series. I've written the second one, is called Blood and Gold, but I haven't finished that yet. I set that aside to write Mungwort. But the inspiration for The Rabbit, the Jaguar, and the Snake was a short story that I published in my first collection, In a Knife in the Back, called The Unholy Triumvirate. And that one definitely was inspired by my mother's background. My mom is from New Jersey, and I grew up around a lot of people who talk like this. So
Oh,
that's what
don't
that
you
made it.
even don't no 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 no. Don't you come at me with the freaking accent, eh?
Yeah, yeah, that's it. It's the exaggerated Robert De Niro. Oh, come on.
Ah, yeah.
One word I learned from writing this is this thing that De Niro does when he does that all the time. That's called a moo, MOUE. So it's called making a moo.
Dylan, my son Dylan, him and I
Yeah.
had this thing about doing that. And
Yes.
he's made it very prominent in multiple pictures. So Dylan Gregory Miles, when you do that, it's a De Niro thing. Sorry.
Yeah, it is. It means not bad, you know. You go like this. So I had a character, and for that one, I didn't have that one was definitely a pantsing novel. And it's too difficult to explain the plot, so I won't go into it. But the main character is you never learn his name. They just call him. Everybody's like, "Hey, it's you." He's like, "Yeah, it's you. It's me. What do you want?" And it's a sci-fi time travel monster mashup involving him. He's immortal, and he's from the early 20th century, a 21st century female detective trying to solve some crimes, and then this otherworldly alien Aztec type guy who all have to come together to save the world from these monsters that are invading. That one I just wanted to get as weird as possible because I thought I'm going to put three.
That. Huh? I swear to God, I would.
Yeah, it's fun. But I didn't want. I wanted to be unhinged with that one. I didn't want to adhere to any specific arc. I wanted to go as crazy as I wanted to, and then get crazier from there, and then see if I could put an arc on it. And that book actually ended up being pretty good. The next one, the sequel, is really difficult because when you do something like that, it's hard to match what you've done and continue it. But I'll finish it. It's just taking a little while.
Well, I mean, you take Jay and Silent Bob, you mix them with Bill and Ted,
mm-hmm.
and then you try to take the insanity of Wayne and Garth, and then you mash them all together. And once you create that, then you have to make them do something to get to a point.
Yeah, yeah.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. It's still, and with that one, that type of writing, usually an epiphany will occur somewhere in the third or fourth development draft where I go, I know how to end it. I know how to tie all this together now. Whereas before it was just, they were off in crazy directions. The ending wasn't there. And then I figured it out. And then from there, you go back and adjust everything that you've written beforehand to make all that make sense. You upload the foreshadowing, you cut out details that don't make any sense because it's not going towards that end. But it is a longer process than just plugging into an arc. It's a lot more fun though.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, because I mean, you're literally, going back to what we said earlier, you're with that kind of dynamic, you're getting so lost in your characters because your characters are so all over the place, like an eye, something bouncing off the walls and all different directions. So moving on now, so we've covered character development. We've covered getting your characters to be cohesive and get to a point.
Plotting.
There was one book that you've written that you would want to turn into a film. Which one would it be?
Right now, it's this one. Another plug. It's Mungwort, and it's not just because it was written as a film. Chip and I really hacked away at structure on this one to make it cohesive, to make it a narrative that contained the type of creativity and twistedness and fun that I like to infuse in my other novels, but also adhere to that arc that everybody loves. I mean, there's a reason that the Marvel movies do so well. They all tell basically the same story. It all follows the Pixar story spine, and that's what people love to consume for entertainment. And the movies and the books, I think, that do really well commercially. And honestly, you know, at this point, this is novel number 7, and I want to start making this even more successful as a business enterprise. The movies that sell the best and the books that sell the best take that structure and then do something original with it. So the structure is going to be very, very similar. But in this case, the setting and the weird toxic fungus that I came up with, which is the Mungwort of the novel, and the purpose for it is the cool little tweak. One of the reviewers, one of the early reviews I got, I think it said terrifying, twisted, and totally original. And I thought, that's, first of all, great alliteration. Yeah, exactly. But that's exactly what I was going for, the twisted and totally original.
Yes.
And being able to do something like that, but also make it entertaining, make it also appealing to people who might not normally read sci-fi or horror. That was kind of the goal. It reminds me a little bit of how The Haunting of Hill House, I don't know if you saw that on Netflix.
Oh, I've watched both versions of it.
Love it. And I'm talking about the series,
one.
not the old movies. The series that came out 3 years ago.
Oh, yes. I watched that too. Yes. Yes.
So that's basically a horror, I guess, miniseries. And it has all of those tropes and all the elements of horror in it. But really at its core, it was about family trauma and what happens to children when they undergo this sort of family trauma, and what happens to them as adults. And that little twist in there, I mean, talk about Stephen King, because he does that really well as well, made that horror show appealing to a broader audience. And also, it wasn't like gory and disgusting, which I don't like to write that stuff. I don't like to watch it. You know, any sort of, you know, nasty, we call it torture porn. Once it hits those notes, you know, maybe when I was 15 or 16, I enjoyed it, but now it's like, that's just gross for grossness sake. You know, if you're going to have something be gross, in a novel of 70 to 80,000 words, have 1 or 2 of those notes in there and make it quick. It's got to be for a reason other than showing gore. But anyways, I got off track. So the point is, that's, you know, because it sprang from a script and then turned this novel, that's the one I think has the most, I guess, capability and purpose into being able to be turned into a movie. The funny thing is so it was, when did I start writing? We started writing the script at the end of last year and finished it early this year. And then I gave it a month and I started writing the novel, and I printed out the script, and it was, you know, 110 pages long. And then it wasn't even a draft. I just basically kind of novelized the script. And when I was done, I was like, oh shit, there's only 30,000 words here. Like I'm going to have to add another 40,000 words. And I ended up
double spaced, man. Don't double space.
big font. And then that was one of those things, because it was reverse engineered. I was like, yeah, I mean, that's why, you know, movies are only 110 pages long and it's primarily dialogue. And that's why people always say, oh, but the book was so much better. I was like, well, yeah, because there's more content. You explore the world in so many different ways that movies can't. That, you know, often it's difficult for someone to take a book and really truly portray it in a film. But with this one, I thought, well, no, we've got the book, but we've also got the movie, and they're the same and separate entities. And so it was a lot of fun thinking of this project that way as well.
Okay, so you reminded me of something. We're running out of time, but I'll clean it up here.
Okay.
So I had a slight disagreement with one of my employees this week. She was saying that she had read, what was it? Read a book before she watched the movie, and she prefers to do it that way.
Yeah.
I could not remember which one it was, but then she said the only one that I would love to, what she enjoyed was watching the movie before reading the book, was Princess Bride. Okay, so that, like, I can't remember what the other one was, but she said literally the Princess Bride was the only one that she wanted to watch the movie before she read the book.
That's how I experience
the other one, she, like every other movie, she reads the book before she watches the movie. Mm-hmm. So as an author, what do you recommend doing? Reading the book first or watching the film?
I honestly don't know anymore. It used to be the rule in my family when I was a kid, when my children were little, sorry, that if a movie came out and it was based on the book, then we had to read the book first, and then we could go see the movie. And I still stand by
like
that.
A house rule.
Yeah. So my kids were Harry Potter fans before the movie started, but I think the youngest one came along after the movies already began, and she was too young to understand the book anyways, or the movies. But then once she started getting old enough to do it, I was like, well, now the movies are out on DVD, you got to read the book first before you get in the movies, because that was just the rule. But there are, well, it's just, and then I would say that they made fun of me because we would go and watch the movie version of not just Harry Potter, just anything that we did. And then I would say, so let's compare and contrast what on in the movie. They're like, Dad, stop being a teacher. I was like, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was about to say, seriously, James, stop being a teacher.
Knock it off. But Princess Bride came out when I was in high school, and I remember watching it on cable, and I didn't even know it was a book. And I love that movie. Everybody loves that movie. And it wasn't until, I don't think I even watched the credits for a real long time. And I was like well into adulthood where I was like, that was a book? And then I tried to read the book, and I was like, I don't like that book. I don't like the book at all.
I had no idea either.
Yeah.
It was until, like 20 years later.
Yeah. And it's slipping my mind right now, some of the other things that have come out recently, because content is king in Hollywood, and they're not robbing, but they're using graphic novels like with The Walking Dead or whatever it is. If they can find something that's already done for them and they can adapt it, they'll do it, especially something that already has a base. But
I'm going to say this. Okay. I'm going to stand up and say this. I got it.
Hey, as I say, you got to squat down.
Hollywood has run out of ideas. So I'm asking my audience, if you have an idea that is original, no zombies, no aliens, no family trauma, no, come on, James, help me out here.
Rom-coms.
No rom-coms. No superheroes. Guys, come on. Give me something. Hey, I need to get on my freaking knees here. I've always told a lot of my friends, I'm that guy with the sign on the roof of the skyscraper. Aliens, please come, because I want a fifth food group, because I'm tired of the food on Earth. Okay. So bring the aliens, bring the fifth food group, give me something different. I'm asking my audience, come on, guys, give me some new ideas. Listen to James Noll. He has sat there and he has given you a very good path to breaking out of your shell, following your passion, writing your books, writing your novels, creating your characters. I'm sure that if you have any more questions, you can reach out to James Noll via the internet. James, how do people reach you if they have a question about how to write a book?
My website is silverhammer.studio, or silverhammerstudios@gmail. You can email me there. And before we leave, I'm also doing the book festival this weekend. Fredericksburg Book Festival.
We're not leaving yet. We're getting there.
Okay. But yeah, you want to contact me.
Patience, son, patience.
If you want to contact me, silverhammer.studio. It used to be jamesnoll.net. And if you go to jamesnoll.net, that shoots you over to silverhammer.studio.
There you go. So you can contact James with any questions. I'm going to get off my knees now. Now, what is in the future for James Noll, the author?
I've got to, so Mungwort, shameless plug, Mungwort is being released. I try to release a book every Halloween-ish. And so I love the schedule of New Release Tuesday. It's something from, the albums. When we used to have albums, they were always released on Tuesdays. And
we still have them, James.
I know, but it's not the same thing, because I remember in Fredericksburg going to the Blue Dog and standing outside the Blue Dog and waiting for it to open on Tuesday mornings.
Brother.
The morning that Smashing Pumpkins, Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, I pre-ordered it, so I knew it was waiting. And Jack saw me as I was standing there. He walked up to his door. He's like, "I got it." It's like,
you're so young.
New Release Tuesdays.
I remember buying the Seventh Son of the Seventh Son album. Okay.
Yeah. I love record stores. But so yeah, New Release Tuesday, and so this year Tuesday, the last Tuesday in October is the 26th. So Mungwort is coming out on the 26th, and I probably won't start writing in blood and gold again until January, because I have to get better at marketing. When you do indie book stuff, I mean, it's all about marketing. I can come up with 20 books and not market any of them, and none of them will sell. And so I'm trying to do my best with doing the pre-sale for this, making sure my email list knows about it. You know, once now the cons are opening up again, I'll go out and then I'll push it that way. I'll sell it that way. But I also want to get better at email marketing and online marketing. I think that's definitely in the future. And part of that is
not wrong.
What's that?
You are not wrong, bro.
Yeah.
You know, even for the stuff that I do every now and again and over the years, you know, online marketing is very key. So once you guys get to that point, you know, remember, develop the product and just start pushing it, and you have to get it out there. And, you know, unfortunately for us old timers, we have to realize the new market is online.
One of the best things that I've done is email marketing, to be honest. I've got about 2,000 people on my email list. And every Tuesday I shoot out an email to them. It's driven sales. It's driven pre-sales. It's gotten people to come to the book festival. And you're making super fans, and that's really what you want to do. It sounds antiquated because it's email, but then when you think about it, we all still use it. And so, you know, people, I give them a free book. In fact, if you want to go to silverhammer.studio, there's a link. It says join my email list. You click on that, you give me your email, you get a free ebook version of my short stories, and then, you know, you're on my list. You could always unsubscribe. You don't have to, you know, it's not, you get stuck on there, but that gives me access to 1,000 to 2,000 people a week.
You're so nice. All right, James, let's wrap this up with your shameless plugs. Let's tell everybody about the book festival and what to expect and any future comings beyond that.
So the book festival, it's the Fredericksburg Book Festival. It's downtown Fredericksburg. We're out on the street. It's usually we do it in Riverfront Park, but they're renovating it. So we're on the street in front of Riverfront between Hanover and Charlotte. It's over 70 authors from a plethora of genres. We've got horror, sci-fi, fantasy, nonfiction, poetry, book arts. We've got rom-coms. We've got children's books. Any genre you can imagine, we've got authors there who will be selling their books, essentially. Normally we do panels and we have a food truck there, but the pandemic kind of cut some of that stuff back. And also the renovation, they don't have electricity, so we can't set up a PA system. So it will just be the authors this year. But you get to go meet, talk to authors, buy their books, get on their lists, come out. It's going to be a beautiful day. I think it's going to be like in the mid 70s. Like maybe 50%, 59% humidity, which is why we do it in the fall, is for those pretty good times. So it's 10 to 4, it's free. We're doing book giveaways. We've got some Kindle giveaways, and you know, I set that up because I'm an indie author and I wanted to market my work. I also wanted to set up an opportunity for indie authors in the region to set up their work. And you can go to fredbookfest.com. What's that?
So you developed the whole thing?
Yeah. There's book festivals like this all over the place. The one I went to was up in Gaithersburg in Maryland. Yeah. And it was a city-run event. And I went to one of those and I thought, there's no reason why Fredericksburg can't do something like this. And then I looked down here, I was like, there's nobody doing it, so I'm going to set it up. And so I did it.
So have you, obviously the first thought in your head was probably, you know, hook with Rappahannock Regional Library. Mm-hmm. You know, are they involved with it or no?
Yep. Yeah, they help us out every year. They send out, I guess, email blasts to their list. They, we post flyers in their libraries. They've got a table there. They're one of our, our partners in kind. Fred Parent is also a partner. My business partner, Chris Jones at chrisjonesinc.com. He's a writer. He's an editor. He helps people with writing their books, and he writes articles. He edits Fred Parent. He's going to have a table there. But that's how, he and I and Amy Bain, she's no longer our partner, but she was our partner to begin with. We just started the whole thing up and built it up from scratch. And we're in our 5th year.
Awesome, man. Awesome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is James Noll. Extraordinary. He's a musician. He's a sound man. He's a writer. He's a teacher. He's a man.
That's enough. I'm getting old. I'm gonna
everything
stop
but an eggplant, But I hope you enjoyed listening to him. So coming up next month, we have Mariana Venturas Dixon, who is a leading female paranormal investigator for the UK. She runs the largest paranormal convention in the United Kingdom. She will be on next month. Recorded interview because of the time difference and everything. We have a special effects prop maker coming up. I want to say that's the first episode of October. He's going to talk a little bit about his craft. One of my special co-host guests will be Dar Lloyd. She was the EVP specialist from back in the day in Paranormal Porch. We'll be bringing some EVPs and things like that. So October will be all over the place. Oh, and I'm sorry, I could not get her on this month, but she is available next month. Shelby Lynn Madison. She is an upcoming country music star. She is recording in Nashville. She has a wonderful, wonderful plethora of country music that I know you guys are going to love. But yeah, I'm going to drop that in October, because what else am I but random? So also, possibility, I have a photojournalist that has been in 5 war zones since the Reagan administration. I just met today. He has agreed to come on the show, and this will be phenomenal for the veterans. Hell of a story. Who else do I have?
You have a schedule up on your website, on your webpage?
No, James, I'm not that organized, Mr. Noll.
I'm never going to remember this, and like 3 of those sound really, really interesting to me.
That's why I need to have like a second that does my organizing, because I'm really bad at that. I get all the talent and then organize all the shows, but as far as the whole social media thing goes, and I'll tell you, it's like what you were saying about the marketing. I'm horrible, because I got, we got day jobs. Yeah, and we get home, we're like, it
takes time and effort.
It takes so much time and effort, dude. I will get everything out there as soon as I can. I just want to let you guys know what's coming up. Yeah, I have a lot of people. I still have spots to fill in. I want to get some of the local haunts, the organizers for those. I want to get those on the show. I plan on making November kind of a history month. So I'm trying to get Jay Harrison, who is the reenactor for Colonel James Monroe. Get him on the show. Don Mullen, who is a reenactor for Abraham Lincoln, who's a friend of mine. If I could get him in front of the camera. He's also is a math teacher, which is really weird. He never planned on being Abraham Lincoln. He just happens to look like him. And he sang karaoke right here in this room about 5 years ago. So, and I might play that video just to embarrass him. But yeah, we have a lot of great things coming up in the next couple of months. Thank you again, James Noll. Everybody, big round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, James. It's just me and Fred. So
that's enough. All I need is Fred.
There you go. All right, brother. But yeah, seriously, thank you so much.
No, thank you, Stan. It was
I
awesome.
learned a lot because honestly, I've been trying to write stuff for years, and I keep putting it down because I run into that block of how to create two different people and then mesh them and then get to the end of the road.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard.
It is, man. And you must have multiple personalities because I sure
I just keep them tamped down.
Gotcha. All right, man. You take care. Come into the store more often. I love to see you.
Yeah.
And
restock my root beer.
I wish I could, brother. They discontinued it.
No, not root beer. It was birch beer. It was birch beer. That stuff was good.
Yes, it was.
Oh, well.
All right, man. You
All right,
have a good
Stan.
night.
Thanks, man. Take it easy.
Take care. All right, everybody. So that is the end of the fourth episode. Is that what we're on? Eric, pipe in here, brother. Everybody, welcome my producer, Eric. Eric.
That is the fifth episode.
Oh my God, that's the fifth episode. Eric, turn your camera on, man.
I've got company. It's my birthday.
Oh. Okay, yeah, I don't want to see the midget strippers.
I got my kid in the room and he's being all loud and there's people around.
Okay, roger that. All right, well, everybody, wish Eric a happy birthday. Thank you, Eric, for everything that you've done thus far, getting us this far. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Play it, Sam. Holy shit. Hey, Eric.